Campbell, there's a reason why you call Meghan Markle's flop brand Was Never. But as Harry and Meghan's marriage crumbles, so too does her commercial ventures. And obviously, a lot of this has been overshadowed of late because of the other crises in the royal family. But I do think sometimes it is worth just zooming in on how bad things have got, because, of course, the financial pressures on the Sussexes is what is going to lead to further trouble for the British royal family. But look at this. This week, the Royal News Network posted alongside these just dire pictures. Meghan's attempts at marketing continue to swing from wildly amateur to just plain bad. This attempt to sell the Heritage Library set is offensive to any reader, and it's obvious that books aren't really Meghan's specialty. Can you fathom how annoying it would be to get honey or tea spilled all over your book? Also, the candles make me nervous being so close to the wall and underneath a shelf. This follows the utterly bizarre and nonsensical presentation of 5 spoons of spread. Honestly, look at this. Look at this. I could not believe that this actually went out as a piece of advertising, even though the set she's advertising is a trio, meaning there are just 3 spreads. The set also has 2 spreads that are red, so which one is the raspberry and which one is the strawberry? No idea, and in no way is that appealing to consumers. No, it's really not. As ever, continues to remain a crime against marketing, business, and common sense. The desperation is also setting in as the wildly overstocked inventory continues to drive constant emails and attempts to bundle things as a way to get people to buy merchandise. But the longer Meghan sits on everything without offering steep discounts, the more money she'll lose in the long run. She needs to hire some competent people and listen to them. Otherwise, Meghan's dreams of billionaire status will die with piles of expired food spread and an endless supply of flour sprinkles. Lady Colin Campbell, how bad have things got in Montecito for this business?
Well, they've been pretty dire for a long time, Dan, as you know only too well. And I mean, her presentations are beyond pathetic. I mean, which bibliophile would ever put a cup of tea on an open book beside a candle that is lit and is 2 inches from the bottom of a shelf? And then there are lemons everywhere, always lemons. I mean, she's a lemon. She's a lemon. The only thing is she doesn't know how to make lemonade. And you know, I think Meghan's delusionalism has got them into quite a lot of trouble financially, because my understanding is that Harry is the one who stumped up for all of that stock, because Netflix refused to not only stump up for it, but Netflix refused to actually stock it. And it's a disaster. And no matter how much she dresses it up, the fact of the matter is, a pig in lipstick is still a pig, whether his name is Meghan Markle or Was Never.
Indeed. But Lady C, this is just a nightmare scenario, though, for the British royal family, because, of course, the financial desperation that is coming means that there are going to be more desperate stunts.
But you see, my understanding is that Meghan has completely blanked the fact that Harry is justified in being seriously worried that if his father doesn't last very long, nor is the Dukedom of Sussex and the Earldom of Dumbarton going to last very long. And Meghan might find herself being Mrs. Henry Mountbatten Windsor. And how are they going to be able to market at that point? But he is evidently very worried that he is in the last chance saloon. And I suspect, would like her to reel herself in, but she won't and he can't reel her in. And I think that's the dynamic that's going on. And, you know, the marriage, as we both know, has been rocky for a long time. And when hunger comes in through the door, love flies out through the window, especially if, you know, he's no longer treated to all of the Stan gets blowing in the wind songs that he used to get initially. And all of the rewards that he used to get, you know, as they were roasting chicken and tossing salad. If you get my drift.
Oh my God. Those words. Yes, Lady C. Yes, what? Moving swiftly on. Moving swiftly on. I think we saw that. Yes, yes.
Sorry, before you move swiftly on,
yes.
Can I just do one of Meghan's tricks? The lizard tongue that matches the lizard lap. Unfortunately, because of my injury, I can't do the lizard lap.
Thank God.
I would show you otherwise.
Thank God.
She used to do it with Patrick Adams on what's that show called again that they used to do?
Suits.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Lady C. Okay, now we will move swiftly on to Israel, where this Middle Eastern tour was so extraordinary, Lady C, and we haven't spoken since then. So, of course, it didn't make any sense. And these two just looked like, well, Harry just looked like he really despised her. But politically, Lady C, the fact that you have Israel's deputy foreign minister coming out publicly and calling Harry effectively a liar with his pants on fire over his claims in that Channel 4 News interview. Indeed, she said, frankly, repeating demonstrably false narratives raises serious questions, and one might say that if your trousers were on fire, you might not even notice. I mean, in other times, Lady C, if there was not a war in Iran, if there was not an arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, that alone would be posing a serious threat to the British royal family. But it doesn't mean that Charles can just ignore this, does it?
Well, I think, Dan, let's remember the king is very seriously ill. And anybody who's been very seriously ill knows that you cannot be dousing fires in all directions. You have to choose which are the most dangerous fires to douse, if only because it's a matter of energy. That's because he's so ill. Even if he hadn't been ill, there would still be prioritization. I think because of the war in Iran, and because of our government's reaction to the war in Iran, and because of our status within a special relationship that seems to be foundering, there are all sorts of geopolitical considerations that impress upon this situation in a way that they wouldn't have. But the fact of the matter is, Harry and Meghan have no right as members of the royal family, working or otherwise is beside the point, to be involving themselves in political matters, and certainly not in contentious political matters. Now, Harry and Meghan have clearly decided that the Gaza situation is going to gain them brownie points in certain quarters. And they have gone with that as a result. I mean, that they have got themselves caught up yet again in a melee that is very much bigger and far more complex than they seem to realize. Because on the one hand, you have the state of Israel denying that aid doesn't get through, and they quote, I think, that 150 to 300 trucks per diem get through. Then you have the Gazans saying that, yes, some aid gets through, but that's A, not enough, and B, it only gets through to where the state of Israel wants it to get through. And the rest of the people are seriously challenged. They don't have enough food, they don't have enough medical supplies, etc. So they have inserted themselves into a situation that is truly very complex and very volatile. And I mean, any historian can tell you that during the Second World War, the Nazis used to allow Red Cross inspections in the concentration camps. And they would have very grand, very celebrated, very important and prestigious neutral observers, sometimes royals as well, who would partake of these inspections for the Nazis to convince the world that everything that was taking place in the concentration camps was perfectly regular. And there is the accusation that the state of Israel is doing this at the moment with aid to Gaza. So without getting into who's right and who's wrong, I'm simply pointing out that Harry and Meghan have no right to be involving themselves in such a momentous and volatile situation where there are accusations of crimes against humanity on both sides. And why is Harry even getting himself involved in this? And I'll tell you why, so that he and Meghan can pose as being pseudo-royal for their next money-spinning opportunity on a pseudo-royal fake visit somewhere else. And the government and the British royal family should put a stop to this. And this is another reason why Harry and Meghan should be stripped of their titles, because they are behaving in a way that is dangerous politically to the interests of this country, especially in a situation that is so nuanced, because even though we are allies of the Americans, our government is taking a step backwards, as is the French and as is the German government, in terms of supporting the attacks against Iran. Now, I actually happen to be more in favor of the attacks against Iran than Starmer, but I understand the Starmer's point of view. And I'll tell you, as this situation escalates, we might end up being very grateful for the fact that Starmer's pusillanimity has actually turned out to be in our best national interests. So for all of those reasons that are going on, Harry should never have opened up his mouth. But of course, he did.
He did. And Lady C, what did you make of the fact that he kept on pushing Meghan away? There were moments when she was trying to grab his hand and he just didn't want any part of it. What did you make of their body language? I mean, there's one instance of it, but it happened quite often.
Dan Wootton raises a series of claims that deserve closer examination, not because they are sensational, but because of what they imply. In this segment, He argues that the difficulties surrounding Meghan Markle's commercial ventures are no longer a side story. In his telling, they are becoming central to the wider royal problem. He suggests that financial pressure, public overexposure, and political freelancing are converging into something more serious, a reputational and constitutional risk not only for the Sussexes, but for the monarchy itself. That is the issue worth examining here. Because beneath the mockery, beneath the criticism of branding, presentation, and public appearances, there is a more consequential question. What happens when former working royals continue to trade on symbolic status, while also intervening, directly or indirectly, in matters the monarchy traditionally avoids? And what happens when the institution appears either unable or unwilling to draw a clear line? Dan's commentary is emphatic, sometimes theatrical, but the underlying argument is fairly clear. He is not simply saying that Meghan Markle's business strategy appears weak or that public interest may be fading. He is saying that commercial decline creates pressure. And pressure changes behavior. It narrows options. It increases the temptation to pursue attention, controversy, and new relevance wherever it can be found. That, in institutional terms, is the real concern. If public influence becomes a substitute for formal role, then visibility itself becomes the product. And once visibility becomes the product, every appearance has to do more work than the last one. It has to be louder, riskier, more emotionally charged, or more politically resonant. In that sense, the issue is not whether one jam launch, one interview, or one foreign visit succeeds or fails. The issue is whether a pattern is forming in which status is monétised while accountability remains blurred. Dan also focuses heavily on the Sussexes' involvement in contentious international issues, particularly the Middle East. Here again, the temperature of the commentary can obscure the more serious analytical point. The monarchy survives, in part, because it is expected to stand above day-to-day political conflict. That expectation is not decorative. It is structural. Once individuals closely associated with the institution begin speaking into highly contested geopolitical disputes, even unofficially, ambiguity becomes dangerous. Not because every statement will change policy, but because every statement can create diplomatic confusion. If a prince speaks, even a non-working prince, many people will still hear royalty before they hear disclaimer.
Things are coming home to roost, and all the standards blowing in the wind, promises clearly no longer have the same sweet sound that they used to have. And let us hope that Harry finally sees the light. Because, one of the royals said to me the other day, Harry, if Harry knows what's good for him, he better get out while the getting out is good and possible. And of course, it's always going to be difficult for him to get out. But at least something can be salvaged because Meghan is totally poisonous.
Yeah, very true. Very, very
Harry,
true.
I have to say, has bullying a victim, So he's been more of a conspirator, co-conspirator. But if he doesn't get out, this is going to end very badly for both of them. And if he gets out, it's still going to end badly. Because can you imagine the Amber Turdisms that she's going to come up with? She's going to make Amber Turd look as if she has no imagination whatsoever. But at least people won't believe her. So that's something positive.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much set. Lady C, I've got to ask you about the princesses Beatrice and Eugenie because there is new reporting from the newspaper today and the royal commentator Richard Palmer, who says that the princesses are now in royal exile. But what's interesting, Lady C, is he says William won't help them. Now, I had a couple of readings of this article. The first to me is that it seemed to make clear the fact that actually it's unfair to blame William for the fact that the princesses have been asked, for example, not to attend Royal Ascot, which is what the Mail on Sunday did at the weekend. They tried to sort of lay the blame at William. Whereas this new reporting from Richard Palmer makes it clear that the decision seems to be coming from the king. But anyway, let me just take you through this new reporting, then I'll get your reaction. So Richard Palmer writes, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie are said to be horrified by their parents' entanglement with Jeffrey Epstein and are now paying a price for it. In a significant shift in mood at Buckingham Palace, the king appears to have concluded that the sisters must, like their parents, be kept away from royal public occasions. Until now, Charles's position had been that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's daughters were blameless and deserved to have their privileges protected. But after a series of damaging revelations linking them, however, peripherally to Epstein, royal aides have quietly withdrawn their support. The first test comes at Easter, when the royal family gathers at Windsor on Easter Sunday. The royal equivalent of criminologists will be watching to see if Beatrice and Eugenie are in the party. Beatrice and Eugenie, who both have private careers and do not represent the monarchy on the national world stage, are already keeping a low profile. They are not expected to join the royal family at the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey on the 9th of March, nor at Trooping the Colour in June, though their absence from these events is less surprising, as the king has long tended to restrict attendance to working members of the family. But their exclusion from a family event such as Christmas and the royal carriage procession at Ascot would send a clear message, painfully spotlighting the downfall of the House of York. How Beatrice and Eugenie will navigate the next few months and years remains to be seen. Their royal status has helped build their careers, but it may now be a hindrance to a happy and fulfilled life. Craig Prescott, a constitutional expert at Royal Holloway University of London and author of Modern Monarchy, said, I really do wonder if they might not feel they'd be better off no longer calling themselves princesses. Lady C, what do you make of it?
Well, I think he's wrong there. He's obviously never been a prince or a princess, and he therefore doesn't know that people would sooner be separated, their head from their body, than be separated from their rank. So that's ignorance speaking. Having said that, I think that Beatrice and Eugenie have actually been quite proactive behind the scenes, because I know this because I have had peripheral involvement with something where Princess Eugenie, who was the patron of something that I have been involved with for decades, since the 1970s, one of the military charities. And although I no longer am a fundraiser, I still attend the events. And she stepped down as the patron last year. And everybody was really surprised that she stepped down. And they tried to get her to change her mind. And she didn't change her mind. And I said at the time to a friend of mine who actually you might have met, she's a foreign princess, you might have met her. And yes. I'm not referring to a royal, but not a royal princess or an imperial princess, an aristocratic princess. I think you've met them here. But anyway, I'll tell you afterwards who I'm speaking about, but not now.
I think I can work it out, yes.
And, I said, I said something's in the offing. And so they obviously have been distancing themselves to be discreet. And both those girls have been very discreet. And I really do think that anybody who is trying to pile on with them and not take a compassionate and understanding view of things should look in the mirror and ask him or herself whether they are not being a little bit harsh and a little bit unfair. Because the fact of the matter is, neither one of those girls has done anything actually wrong. And the fact of the matter is that if they have been splashed as a result of being near their parents, and even being involved in commercial things that involve their parents, it's not them, it's their parents. And I think really, it's to me, it's very disturbing that two relatively young people would have their lives totally destroyed. just for a newspaper or a commentator to make themselves some money and have column inches. And I speak as somebody who at the age of 25 had my life destroyed by the press with all sorts of unfair things. And I think that we should just move on from them. And I do get why a degree of sort of withdrawal might be a tactically advantageous thing for them to do at this point. And I'm all in favor of that. And, out of sight, out of mind sort of thing. But calls for them to be stripped of their rank and this and that. I mean, why are we now living in such a punitive world where anybody who is accused of something wrong should be pilloried as if they have been found guilty of far greater sins than they have been? That's my take on it. Yeah. I think there's something very, very inhumane about the ethos at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I absolutely do believe in innocent until proven guilty. The only area where I slightly disagree, not on necessarily the princesses, but on Andrew, is that I do think there has been a cover-up on this for 15 years. Not necessarily Andrew's fault, but certainly involving the British deep state and the police. But look, Lady C, before we go, we've got to have some good news because it's all been quite dark. And I was cock-a-hoop when I saw that weird bloke, I know you call him Scabies, his new book, Lady C. Did you see this? It ranked 63,673rd in books in the US, which basically means probably Meghan Markle bought it for Doria and that was it. I mean, you're a best-selling author. His career's finished now, isn't it?
Oh, Dan, never did a nicer person deserve the reward that he is getting than plasticized Megsy Baby's alter ego. Oh, goodness. And mint scabies. Oh, all those scabies that we have to put up with. Oh, yeah, I think he's, I don't see Netflix doing a series on this, do you?
Oh, and I don't either.
He has fallen prey to what a lot of people who are opportunists fall prey to. For a short while, they're a great success. And then the mood changes. And he's also been Markle. Because when I knew that I was going to have to comment on this, I looked at one of his interviews for the promotion of this book. And it was obvious to me that he has no contact anymore with Megsy Baby or H. And that, he was just waffling on. So he's served his purpose. He's been flushed the way she flushes everybody who she regards as of no use anymore. Because Megsy Baby, as we all know, is very good at dropping turds and then clearly flushing them. And she's done it to him. But I think he's also not a good writer. And I couldn't even get through Endgame.
No, it was awful. I couldn't either. He can't write, actually. He can't write. He's a very stupid guy. That's just a fact, and he's destroyed his own career. But anyway, we celebrate it. Lady Colin Campbell, thank you so much. And of course,
titles travel faster than constitutional nuance. That is why informal interventions can carry formal consequences. And that may be the strongest part of Dan Wootton's argument, that the distinction between private citizen and royal figure remains unstable so long as the symbolism is kept, the language is kept, and the access to prestige is kept. The segment also turns to body language, marital strain, and the possibility that Prince Harry may now be trapped in a model he no longer controls. That enters more speculative territory, and it should be treated carefully. Public appearances can suggest discomfort, but they do not prove motive. They do not prove collapse. And they certainly do not prove private intention. What they can do, however, is reinforce a broader impression. And that broader impression, rightly or wrongly, is of a project under stress. A couple who once positioned themselves as modern global actors now risk appearing reactive rather than strategic, moving from grievance, to branding, to activism, to publicity management, without a stable center. When a public project begins to look improvised, the damage is not only personal. It affects credibility. And credibility, once eroded, is extremely difficult to rebuild. There is another important theme in Dan's commentary, the idea that King Charles may be unable, or unwilling, to respond decisively because of larger pressures, health, institutional strain, and competing crises. Whether or not that assessment is fair, it points to a significant succession question. If unresolved issues are allowed to drift, they do not disappear. They become inheritance. The burden moves forward. That is where Prince William enters this conversation, not simply as heir, but as the likely executor of decisions deferred. Dan frames that in personal terms, but institutionally it is about something else, whether the next phase of the monarchy will accept ambiguity, or whether it will impose a stricter definition of who represents the crown, who benefits from it, and who no longer can. In the end, this is not just a story about two unpopular public figures, or a struggling lifestyle brand, or one erratic interview cycle. It is a story about the cost of half-defined status. The monarchy has historically depended on hierarchy, restraint, and role clarity. The Sussex model challenged all three at once, retaining the aura, rejecting the limits, and monetising the gap between the two. For a while, that ambiguity may have seemed sustainable. Now, according to Dan Wootton's argument, it no longer is. And if that is true, then the real issue is not whether one venture fails, or one appearance causes backlash. It is whether the institution finally decides that the age of unofficial royalty has reached its limit.